I grew up down in Vinton, down on the state line, born in Orange, Texas, because there was no hospital in Vinton. But my parents had met here in Baton Rouge. They were both working for the state during the war. And they had lived here in the Goodwood area and also in a house that still stands over right off the Capitol grounds at one time. And Daddy was from Lafayette, Mama was from down in Bayou Lafourche area. And so they lived over there after they were married. And as soon as I could get out of my little town, I came to school in Baton Rouge. And it was kind of odd to be, in a way, retracing their lives, because as soon as I dropped out of college at LSU and started playing music, I was working for the state again and kind of living over in this neighborhood. All my life I'd played music. My grandmother played piano, my grandmother from Lafayette. My aunt played piano. They had started me in piano lessons when I was about 5. And when I came over to LSU, I brought my little guitar with me, my little folk singing guitar, but I really didn't sing. And I met a woman, a girl, Shelley Carter from Shreveport in the dorm, and she needed somebody to sing with her, so we became a folk duo. And then I got my heart broken at Mardi Gras that year and wrote my first heartbroken song. And not long after that, decided that I was going to get a job and think about college a little bit, and which I've been thinking about now for 35 years. And my roommate and I moved into an apartment, and we had started meeting the interesting characters that we were seeing around campus and off campus, and that were musicians and kind of the counterculture. And basically I fell in with the wrong crowd, which turned out for me to be the very right crowd. And I got invited to audition for a band, guys who had already been playing music around town. Richard Reams on bass and Alan Jokinen on guitar, and Greg Black was singing, Tiny Lindley was singing, George Bowers was playing drums, and Greer Trueluck was a rhythm guitar player. He was like the kid in the band because he was still in high school. And I got asked if I would be in this, or try out for this band. They like to remind me I wasn't just automatically in the band. And I got in, so pretty soon I was playing on Chime Street, Highland Road. Gum. You know how it is down here, everybody names their bands after food of some kind or another, food, drink. The ironic thing is that we were kind of playing what was on the radio, because we were a psychedelic rock and roll band. And I think it was in part, it was the intelligence of the guys in the band and good influences that made it so interesting, because we were picking odd material in addition to the Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Grace Slick stuff we were doing. You know, we were doing some Janis Ian and some Bob Dylan things, which is not that odd, but just a different take on it. And a little bit of soul and blues, because we all came from that, really. So we struck out west to go to San Francisco, about 2 years after that would have been a really good idea. And we stopped in Austin on the way and stayed at Greer's house with a whole bunch of people from Baton Rouge who were already living there, in addition to the musicians we knew, just a whole group. I just fell in love with the whole feel of the place. So we decided to stay. I mean, within 3 days, basically, we had a house and jobs and had made our decision. And we played music in the living room. We played a few little gigs, but a couple of years after that, I worked at the university. We both worked at the University of Texas there. We went to a gig one night, and I think we were probably on our way to the Armadillo World headquarters to see probably Doug Kershaw, as I recall. And we were killing time before we went, so we went to another gig at the one night, a little honky-tonk dive, 1972. And the band, I loved them. They were doing all this different kinds of music. They would do a George Jones song, and then they'd do a B.B. King song, and then they would do a Van Morrison song. And it was kind of right up the alley of all that stuff that we loved, the influences that had driven me. The new music influences like Creedence when they came out, like J.J. Cale, like the band, all these kind of meldings of styles, but all with kind of a Southern roots style feeling. And these guys were doing the real thing and mixing it up the same way. So I introduced myself to the drummer on the break, and he was a few years younger than me, and we got to talking about where he had been, what he'd been doing, and he said he'd been living in Nashville with this songwriter. I said, really? I said, who? And he said, Bobby Charles. So we became fast friends, fast. And I sat in with those guys that night and sang Me and Bobby McGee. And by the next Wednesday, I had a gig. That was Frida and the Fire Dogs. But when I heard Fest, I was thunderstruck. It was really a change of whole direction and focus for me. Well, nobody here don't have to stand in no line. Get on the inside and have a good time in the night. Oh Lord, in the night. Yes, in the wee, wee hour between midnight and day. And that started me off. That was it. You know, Clifton had always been there. As soon as I moved away from Baton Rouge, those were the years that Clifton Chenier was playing over across the river in Plaquemine. And I missed that, and I was so jealous. And we would see him, as soon as I started coming back to play, we would see him at Jay's Lounge, and we'd see him play. In fact, of the two really early high points of my musical life, and really personal life too, one of them was playing with Clifton on a flatbed trailer at a furniture store opening in Lafayette one day, just sitting in, showing up to see him and getting to play. But when we were making the record Hot Tamale Baby, what happened was, by this time I had my Rounder record deal, and this was my second album for them. And I wasn't writing very much, and we were making the record in Slidell, and we were going over to Jeff Hanish's house and pulling, I'd gone over before we had started to record, and we were pulling 45s out of his collection and just put them on. What do we like? What do we like? What can we find? And we found all this material. We needed one more song. And I knew I wanted this up-tempo Zydeco thing. I kind of had one half written and it wasn't going to be finished. And so we went straight to the Clifton. We were already two-thirds through with the record. We went straight to the Clifton and started pulling things out. And when I pulled out that 45, I looked at that title and I said, I don't even know what this sounds like, but we're recording this and it's the title song. And that's how we got it. So we recorded it. He wasn't even doing it. He was playing one night, and I dedicated the record to him too. And he was playing one night at Antone's in Austin, and I got to go see him. And I talked to him and I told him that we had recorded that song and had dedicated the record to him. And he said, oh, I forgot about that song. And he did it that night. He started doing it again. You know, I have taken my touring leadership from people like Clifton. I've taken my whole performance style from him. And when you go out on the road, and it's been this way for the last 10 or 15 years, when you go out on the road, you play festivals, we play clubs all over the country, and the working bands have all seemed to have come from Texas and Louisiana.